Fairly recently, a Christian, popular singer-songwriter, Marty Sampson, came out with his struggle around his Christian faith, even going as far to say that he might be losing it. All around these questions that he felt like weren't being talked about, weren't being answered or even discussed. One of these, he said, how many pastors fall? Many. And he said, nobody's talking about it. And it's a good question, it's a fair question. Why do so many holders of the truth, gurus of the ways, those that preach, fail to practice so often? Well, Marty Sampson, well, everybody asking this question. Well, planet Earth and the internet. My name's Steve Gray. Welcome to an educated guest, and today we want to add to the conversation about why do pastors fall. So firstly, a disclaimer. If you're watching this and you've ever been hurt by someone that's in power, if you've put your faith into someone and have let you down, you put your trust into someone and they've totally abused that, it can be one of the most painful experiences. And so, although it follows the way we want to add to this conversation, we don't want to hide away from this conversation, and we want to talk about it in a light way. In no way do we see your pain, in no way do we see your hurt as entertainment or to be made light of. If you would like to talk to us, if you'd like to speak to us, if you'd like to talk to us further, we would love to hear from you. As just myself and the team, we would like to also just apologize for any leader, any Christian leader that has let you down in any way. We're always here to talk. But for now, back to the subject of why do pastors fall? It goes without saying that this is an opinion, and each individual case would be up to the individual and individual circumstances. But to talk with broad strokes, to maybe even oversimplify, pastors fall, pastors fail, pastors let us down simply because we're not that great. We're not perfect. Like everybody, we are capable. Pastors, preachers are just as capable of making mistakes, of hurting people, of failing. The irony that is forgotten is that the Christian faith is actually, the movement is based on this idea that human beings are broken, that we all have failed. Other philosophies, other faith traditions will tell us that it's not us that are broken, it's the system, and that we need to escape that. Modern ideology will say that we need to just work harder. We need to transcend, vibrate on a higher level, evolve, eat veggies, and somehow we will be perfect. Somehow we'll rise above our failures. Now, these things aren't necessarily bad, especially you should eat your veggies. But it's actually the Christian faith that's not afraid to admit that the human heart is broken. As one of the many examples found in the library of books that is the Bible, it's found in the words of the prophet Jeremiah, who says, the heart is deceitful above all things. It is desperately sick. Who can understand it? The sad reality is we forget this. How quickly we forget this. We put our hope, we put our trust, we put our faith in people, thinking they will provide an answer. Now, we don't just do this in the Christian faith. We do this in all sectors, business, education, in celebrities, in all areas of life. And we give these broken humans all the praise, all the influence, all the power. Let me ask you a simple question. When has giving all of that to an individual person ever been healthy for them? Funny enough, as per normal, the Bible totally agrees. In the ancient book of Samuel, we see this conversation between God and his people. His people are saying that they're petitioning him for a king, saying, we want a ruler. We want someone to look to. We want someone to represent, you, God. God responds with, no, you don't. You see, at that time, they had a group of judges, almost like a governance system. God is like, you don't want to give people or somebody that much power. You don't want to. They'll choose when you go to war. They'll choose what happens with your finance. They'll choose what happens with your farm and harvest. You don't want to give someone that much power. But they persist. And God in his grace allows them a king. And it turns out exactly how he thought it would. Nobody should have that much power. Nobody should be given that much influence. It does something to someone. It reminds me of a story one of my mates tells me about a time where he spent around a decade in a rock band. And he tells a story of close mates that just worked hard to get their name heard, and then had probably about a couple of weeks of what would be kind of similar to overnight fame. Suddenly they were known, almost overnight. Suddenly everybody was actually trying to book them. And they lasted about a month before they disbanded. And once he had had a bit of distance between that and this event, I actually asked him, I said, what happened? Why do you think that when it all came together, when you finally got what you wanted, it all fell apart? And I'll never forget his reflection. He said, Steve, all of us collectively had little insecurities. We had little vices that were only little, that couldn't be seen when we were just a couple of guys practicing in a garage. But the moment we had the power, the moment we had the attention, the moment we had the fame, those little vices became big ones. Those little insecurities got magnified. And ultimately we couldn't carry it. And within weeks we fell apart. I guess it's true what 19th century politician John Acton said when he said, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power, influence, attention and fame tend to do something to us. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, you're right, Steve, let's get them. Hashtag defund the pastors. Let's cut them down. Let's take away their influence. Let's take away their power. Let's take away everything. And that's not what I'm saying. It brings me to the second part of this video. You see, yes, they're not perfect. Yes, I'm not perfect, but either are you. This is the second trap we can fall into, where we need people with leadership. We need people with communication and vision. These giftings are great in community. So the answer is not to treat them now as less than human. The answer is not to swing the pendulum the other way. An old pastor friend of mine would tell me the story that his church, when he first started pastoring, would have a saying, keep the pastor poor. He was told that he wasn't even allowed to buy a house with a pool, even if it was cheaper than another house, because of the way it made it look, of the way it made the church look. The idea is not to take our leaders and cut them off, treat them less than we would treat ourselves. That's just as dangerous. That's going to just as likely lead to a falling of a leader if we treat them as less than the human they are. That's without a doubt going to end badly. That's probably the reason there's pastors and preachers is the number one profession for burnout. They're not perfect. And that means it's also okay to encourage them sometimes. So what's the answer to this? Well, to answer a very complex issue, I guess to add to the conversation with some pretty broad strokes, I would say it all lies within us, where we're placing our expectation, where we place our future, where we place our hope, where we place our expectations and our dreams. We need to find a place or a person or a thing that won't let us down, that is perfect. For the Christian faith, that is Jesus. It's the only true King worth having. It is the true and perfect place for our hope, trust, and faith to lie. As for leaders, well, we start to use some pretty unsexy words that you probably don't hear or want to hear, but they're true. Accountability, boundaries, getting people around you that can tell you when you're off the mark, can tell you when you're making a mistake, but also encourage you. That's what it looks like to manage ourselves as imperfect leaders, to have things around us, to admit, to be self-aware. So all that said, here's a hard truth for you, Marty, and anyone else that might be wrestling with this. Your leader, your future leader, your past leaders are going to fail. Everyone does it. Sometimes they're going to fail big, sometimes they're going to fail small. It's not okay. It hurts. It can hurt really bad. But each time we come across a failing human, it's a reminder that we are too failing. But it's also a reminder that there is a better way. It's also a reminder that there is a better truth. There is a better path, and I believe that's found in Jesus. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope it's at least added to the conversation. We're not hiding around these things. We're not afraid to talk about these things. And so I hope you found it informative, and I'd love to hear where you agreed or disagreed in the comments section. Share it round, and especially hit subscribe, hit like. And we look forward to talking to you soon. I'm Steve, and we'll see you in the next video.